Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Would everybody please continue to stand? I'd like to have a moment of silence for Harold Gary, who passed away this morning. I think most of us knew Harold. Harold was a World War II veteran and served the local community here for over 40 years. As Anthony and I were just talking about, he's been a mentor to many of us in this room. So please follow me in a moment of silence for Harold. Thank you. Stillwater Business Park, open public hearing. Is anyone would like to be heard from the public right now? Please. And Mike, you also have a memo on it, correct?
I do.
You want to read that in while we're getting set up?
Sure. The first sentence is basically the same. Site plan was amended to relocate the westerly driveway and shift the northerly building to the west to provide screening. Variances were granted by the ZBA for the rear setback for the rear storage building, and it is noted on the plan, and lighting plan has been submitted. The lights are all downlit and do not project across the property lines for the new lots.
Thank you. Rich?
So this is, as you know, on for public hearing. Applicant has noted the need for referrals and permits, highway permits, state DEC, general stormwater permit. It's actually, the applicant has indicated that this is in front of the New York City DEP. This stormwater pollution prevention plan has been provided. It's being reviewed by the New York City DEP. Applicant has provided pretty much answers to all the comments. The only thing that's missing outside of the DEP approval of the SWIP is performance bond and engineering fee must be provided so that we can move this forward.
Pat?
Mr. Chairman, they've addressed all of the planning comments. There's one significant change that I'm sure Jeff will explain to you, which is the relocation of the driveway. So at the last meeting, they explained to you the extension of the berm and the addition of the landscaping along the frontage of the property. But the big change from last meeting is that driveway modification.
Great. Good evening, Jeff. Jeff?
As I said, we took those comments into consideration, and we did make amendments to the plan and provided additional information on each of those items. As Pat indicated, the significant one was the elimination of the westerly driveway. The westerly driveway, we thought, gave the facility a little better function, but it certainly was not a necessity, and we understood that it was creating concerns with some of the residential properties across the street, so we did eliminate it from the plan. We also shifted the front building slightly to the west as recommended by one of the speakers, and provided other information on open items. So we think we did respond affirmatively to the comments that we've received to date.
Okay, thank you, Jeff. Any board members, any comments?
I want to thank you for making those changes and working with the residents that this was affecting.
No problem.
Jeff, one other thing I would say to just add on to what Kim just mentioned is I was out there on Sunday, I believe, and I believe there could still be some better housekeeping from the road. All right, I went into the site, drove around by the blue house that's on the property. There was a garbage truck parked alongside of it. I went into the property, walked around the property a little bit, came back out, drove along, and stopped on the road a little bit. I know you're going to do some landscaping, right? But I think vehicles don't need to be seen from the houses. If someone's sitting on their front porch or whatever, I think there's enough property there that you could probably do a better housekeeping job.
Yeah,
I do.
I'll pass that along.
Yeah.
But I'll point to the plan, which is intended to organize some of that by way of designating the parking spaces, not just for vehicles, but for the trucks, and then also orienting the buildings in a way that it'll be somewhat self-contained and
And
not,
that's what I'm asking for. I think the point on the driveway was huge, the lighting was huge that someone mentioned. My biggest concern right now is housekeeping, and it is an easy fix, because you got plenty of property there, and hope this does fix that.
Yeah.
So,
And there will be plantings where the existing blue house is now. So there will not be vehicles parked there because you're going to plant, obviously, evergreens or whatever there too, correct?
correct. Plus the relocated building is moving
Correct.
up.
Correct.
And as you'll recall, I just did what you're not supposed to do.
yeah, I like that.
Yeah, as you'll recall, what we're doing in an effort to create a uniform frontage and screen the property is, number one, relocate the chain link fence, which was commented on.
I saw that, yep.
Behind the plantings. Number two, extend the stone wall to create, a nice hardscape along the roadway, and then put a fairly significant evergreen landscape buffer.
Jeff,
along
would
that.
you turn the other photo around so that people on TV could see it? Thank
Jeff,
you.
that'll all be on their property, correct? Because that was another concern, that something was out beyond the right-of-way line, and I don't know that, I don't have a survey that proves it, but that's
You're
what
correct.
one of the comments was.
The chain link fence was into the right-of-way, and our proposal is to move everything out of the right-of-way and onto the property.
Thank you. I think those are some pretty major improvements. Other comments from the board?
I guess this is a question for Pat. Can we include language in the resolution that tries to address the issue of parking vehicles other than maybe the area that's designated for parking?
Yeah, Brad, I think we can. I mean, it's ultimately property maintenance sort of things we're talking about, which really falls into Mike's
Right, I get it, yeah.
authority, but we can certainly put it in the resolution just to reinforce what you told them now, the numbers that you gave. So, yeah,
Okay.
and I think that helps Mike's enforcement. It's something else to hang his hat on.
Right.
Yeah, doesn't hurt to have it on there, because then it would be a violation of site plan if anything did come up, but hopefully it won't.
I think, does the guy in the back want to speak?
Yeah, but I'll give him a chance. Anything else from the board? Anyone from the public like to be heard on this? Please come up and state your name.
Robert Bowman. I'm a resident at 96 Stillwater Road. It's nice to see everyone again. First of all, I'd like to thank the honorable members of the board for allowing me to come in front of them tonight. I'd also like to truly say I appreciate the efforts of the board to address my concerns from the last meeting, especially concerning the exclusion of the proposed driveway on the west side of the property. Basketball. Glasses don't go well. Someday soon, I'd like to retire and move somewhere warm, away from snow like we have outside today. Though I'm sure it will still be a struggle getting a fair market value for my house due to commercial buildings and vehicles moving closer and still within sight of the street. It sure would be an almost impossible to sell if a commercial driveway was almost directly across the street from me. I'd also like to thank Daniel Maloney for his concession to exclude the driveway and other revisions to the site plan. I understand Mr. Maloney has had some medical issues in the past, and I sincerely wish him the best of health this holiday season and new year. I have just a couple more concerns and questions I'd like to present. The first being, what is going to happen to the area between the proposed 6,000 square foot building and the western property line, and between the 6,000 square foot building and the relocated 5,000 square foot building? I hate doing this. I'll just point out the area over here. Basically, this area all over here. I don't know what these lines are here. Or maybe you can tell me, are these supposed to be parking spaces over here on the western side of the 6,000 square foot building?
Jeff, you'll need a microphone. And try to, as much best you can, keep your distance to one from one another.
Talking about right over here. Talking about like this area all over here.
So there's no proposed improvements in that area. That, in my letter, I explained basically the setup. I think there was some confusion about where the wetland lies, where the improvements are taking place. The wetland is a New York State DEC wetland. It's not located on our property. It's located anywhere from about 100 feet to about 30 feet from our property. The control zone associated with that wetland does extend onto our property. We are not proposing, as I said in my letter, we are not proposing any improvements or activities within that control zone.
Okay.
Thank you. I have this picture that I took today. And this is the western property line with the 5,000 square foot building. And you can see in between, there's containers, trucks, vehicles, trailers, all along the western property line. And this is seen from the street. I would like to see either these vehicles, containers removed from this area and relocated somewhere else on the property, out of sight from the street, and have it on a site plan that no such items are to be placed in this area. Maybe even have some plantings in the area so no items can be stored there. If this is not agreeable or possible, then I request some sort of screening, such as high dense trees on the property line to screen the sight line and noise that may be generated by these vehicles. Another request is that when the work starts on this project, that it is done during normal business hours and not on Sundays and holidays, which has not always been the case in the past. I understand this is a business and, he has things to do, but I'm just asking for a little more common courtesy towards the residents on the street. Now, there are other businesses located in the main building owned by Mr. Maloney. I believe it's the next lot over. As far as I know, there's a gym, a dance school, an auto parts store, a deli meat supplier, which seems an odd mixture of businesses in a moving and storage facility. I just can't see dancers, little girls and boys, dancers out in the parking lot with tractor trailers going by. But anyway, I'd like to know what kind of businesses are going to be in the relocated 5,000 square foot building and proposed building and what is allowed by code. And last, there is currently a sign that is 5 times larger than code allows in front of the main building that lights up all of Stillwater Road. The last thing we need is another huge illegal sign. So will there be any more signage for the new tenants in the new and relocated building? So that's a question I'd like to have answered. And that's all I have for now. Again, I'd like to thank the board for listening to my concerns. Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, and Happy New Year.
Thank you. Jeff, can you respond to work hours, anything you know about the multi-use facility? I'm not sure there's much to say on that. And the signage.
Sure. First of all, the signage and the multi-uses are associated with the lot to the east, which is not part of our application. Our application is for the 3 storage buildings.
Will there be any additional signs added for
There
the?
will be no additional signs.
Thank you.
And they will be used strictly as storage. There was a comment about containers. The containers are not into the wetland buffer, but the containers are proposed to be relocated internally into the site. That we show the area right behind this building is where the containers would be lined up and parking would be beyond them. So we have taken into consideration that rearrangement. We've taken into consideration the screening of that.
So the building would screen the containers?
Correct. That's correct.
From what I'm hearing tonight, it actually seems like once the project's completed, it will be a better appearance than what it is today from the road. And I think that's all of our objective here. I think, I'm sure most of us have been out there, if not all of us. We don't want an eyesore there. I like all the changes you've made. I think the entire board does. But let's just pay attention to some buffering and screening along the way. And can we make that part of this, Mike? Part of the resolution?
The screening that's on the property or additional?
The screen that's on the property, just.
The screening, that's proposed for the property.
Yeah.
That is a condition of the approval right now. If they build and get approval on this site plan everything on that site plan has to be built before they can get any certificate of occupancy for that property.
And maintained in perpetuity.
That's
So
correct.
that's not something, if it dies, it goes away, it's there forever. He'd have to replace that landscaping.
There was a question about the use of the 5,000 square foot building or the occupancy. Would you know anything on that, Jeff?
Yeah, as I said, the three buildings that are part of this application will be strictly storage, no other uses.
Anyone else from the public wish to be heard? Any other comments? Need a motion to close the public hearing?
Okay, I'll make a motion to, since there's no other public comments, I'll make a motion to close the public hearing for Stillwater Business Park.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And Pat, can you prepare a resolution? There's no sense in waiting a month on this. Can you, or with the holidays longer, can you prepare a resolution contingent upon the things that Mike mentioned earlier about the engineering fee, the DEP letter, and the bond?
Can do, Mr. Chairman, not a problem. So by motion, just authorize you, if the board would consider a motion, to authorize the chairman to execute the resolution when it's prepared in the next day or so.
I'll make a motion to authorize the chairman to sign the resolution, provided it has all of the comments added that we've discussed this evening.
I second. All in favor?
Aye. Thank you very much.
Thank you for speaking. I think your input was very valuable. Thank you.
And thank you, Jeff, for working with us and making this a much better project.
Yeah, yeah. Next on the agenda is Hillcrest Commons for a public hearing. Mike, I don't believe you had any comments.
I do not.
Rich?
Sorry, Mr. Chairman, this is on for a bond return. All work has been completed in accordance with the approved site plan.
And Pat? No issues on the bond return. Anyone from the audience like to be heard on this? If not, we need a motion to close the public hearing, a motion to recommend a full bond return.
Mr. Chairman, being there's no comment from the public, I'd like to make a motion to close the public hearing and a second motion to return the bond.
Let's stay with the first one. A motion to close the
Motion
public
to
hearing.
close.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Sorry, go ahead.
And I'd like to make a motion for a bond return.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Thank you, Anthony.
John, so that, John, the next step for this is that this goes now to the town board for their approval, and once they release the bond, it comes back to you.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, if I just may say something quickly. This is the conclusion of a project was 2 phases and went on for
Can you
quite some
speak a
time.
little louder into the microphone, please?
Yes, my name is John Bain-Marty with Wilder Balter Partners. We're the developer and the owner of the project. And this year, as you know, is challenging. And I just want to say for the record that working with the professionals in this town was, throughout this, was really a pleasure. There were a lot of things to address and to deal with, and it was done professionally. And fortunately for everyone, we were able to continue work and keep everyone safe and get to completion. So I just wanted to say that this evening and wish everyone a happy holiday and happy New Year.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
DP 53 LLC Spins Bowl. Mike, I believe you had some comments?
Okay, yes, I'm out.
Yeah, I spoke to the architect today. There's some confusion on the property because there's a whole area that used to be, at one time, the Briar Patch, and then it was a restaurant type, I guess you would call the back. And now their claim is that they don't use it as a restaurant. Is that correct?
Well, that's right. We don't actually have a formal restaurant.
Okay,
in
so
the
they don't
property.
use it as a restaurant, so I need to get a breakdown to put a parking calculation on this whole thing. So he did get me a floor plan today, Obviously, we were only here for a few hours today because of the weather. I did not get a chance to check the parking calculation, so that is on me. I will finish that up. But it's just confusing, because how do you have a restaurant, you have the space there, you're not using it as it, but you have to put parking on it for something, so.
Well, can it just be included in the overall, like, the whole venue is, like, what is 30-some thousand?
All right, after I'm done, we'll talk about it,
okay.
but that's, okay, but, and floor plans, elevations. I wanted to meet with the architect to discuss it. We did not really discuss it till today, and that was it. So, yeah, at some point, we should figure out which way we're going to go with getting a parking calculation. If it's going to be entertainment space, if they're going to have the axe throwing or whatever inside, or dart throwing inside, or whatever inside, that's what we need to know, what they do in this space, not just it's an empty space in the back of the building, so.
Okay, and I'm sure we'll find some of that out tonight, hopefully.
Sure.
And, okay. Rich, you had some comments?
No comments, Mr. Chairman.
And Pat?
No further comments. The applicant did address our prior comments, which were generally related to the operation of the facility and clarifying how the space was going to be used. So we have that information that's been submitted.
Maybe you want to give us a little overview on, answer some of Mike's questions if you can?
Sure, so there's space where the bar is located, and it is generally in support of the rest of the bowling center. Part of the space is used when we have birthday parties. After the kids are done bowling, we move them over to that space for pizza and eating. So we have a bunch of long tables set up there. So it's sort of like a party room. Is a big area. The space is essentially, instead of having a separate party room, we just do it in there to get them off the lanes. We do have a couple of axe throwing lanes inside. We have a long foosball table. I think there's two billiards tables.
Are those inside you mentioned?
Inside, right. So that space is all basically chewed up with the bar, billiards, foosball, a few arcade games, and the axe throwing and the party area for the kids. We don't actually operate, only because we've never had demand for it, and I don't perceive us actually ever having demand for it, a separate restaurant inside the bowling center.
Could I go there and order a pizza and sit down at a table and eat it in the back? Or french fries and a drink?
I mean, theoretically, you could. I don't even, there's really couches. There's not, I don't even know if we actually
Okay,
have
that's-
tables in the space.
That's why I'm trying to understand what's there. So maybe it's a matter of me doing an inspection and walking over there and taking a look at it, so that this way I really see it, not just on paper, because sometimes it's totally different on paper than, well, it's the same, but you can't get the full gist without seeing it. So maybe I'll run by one. Are they open at daytime?
They'll be open tomorrow. I could check the website on when they're at.
Okay, that's fine. I
probably
could check
after
too. I
3
could call
o'clock.
over there and set something up. So that may be better than even speaking to the architect. If I go do a site visit, I'll have a real good idea of what they're doing.
For some reason, I thought the axe throwing was outside.
It is going to be.
Oh,
Okay, that's, yeah, that's how my recollection.
can you, give us, anything I both had that view, can you give us explain the project again to us?
Sure. Well, we have some area in front of the building that we want to repurpose as an outdoor gaming
Okay, yeah.
area. That'll have some games like axe throwing, fouling, cornhole, stuff like
And
that.
that's out, if you're looking at the building, that's outdoors on the right-hand side?
That's right.
Okay.
Right.
That's what I visualized.
Right, and then we do have today, we do have 2 axe throwing lanes inside the building in the space that was discussed.
Are those going to remain inside and you're just going to put additional outside?
That's right. So the indoor ones are used, we don't have a lot of area in that space, so all we could fit were 2. So that'll be used in the colder weather, fall through spring, and then in the spring and summer, the business really will transfer outdoors.
I understand it's to fill a void in your business when bowling, bowling has its peaks and then there's not a lot of use for it afterwards, off-season. So I do think it's a good idea if Mike goes out to verify a lot of these items.
And could you just clarify, this is a single operator, it's not a separate business, it's part of Spins Bowl?
It'll be operated by the same team that's inside, yeah. Generally, after April, our business for these type of bowling centers really dries up. I mean, we'll lose 80% of our business between May and September. So it's really, this is a way where we could hopefully make it a bit more consistent. It still won't be consistent through the 12 months, but this maybe eliminates part of that inconsistency. So with the labor force and everything, we could keep people on for 12 months instead of hiring people and then furloughing them in the off-season.
And with COVID, it may also give them an additional help
It
outside
also
too.
gives the public an opportunity to have outdoor activity.
Sure.
Yeah, I think it's a great idea. I just want to make sure we do things right.
What are the hours of operation for the outdoor area?
Well, currently, I'd like to keep it the same as the indoor. Our operating hours are Monday through Thursday and Sunday. We close by 11 o'clock. And then Friday and Saturday, we never stay open past 1.
Okay. So I guess that goes hand in hand with the question I know we asked last time about outdoor music, and you really kind of waffled on it. You said, I want to keep my options open, and I'm not really sure.
Right, and we understand the sensitivity to that. What I suggested in the Q&A was we be allotted 15 days a year where we could have outdoor music. And that music would end at 11 o'clock, so it wouldn't go past 11.
Better yet, you would need to get an outdoor amplification permit from the town clerk, and it goes through the town board for anything you want to do outside. This is something I found out, well, I read about after the fact last time we spoke about it. They would need amplification permits, and that would be through the town board and revocable if you go over what they're supposed to do or if they get too many complaints. So that's something that you would really want to watch,
Okay.
Make sure the person has that number on the dial where to go. Don't go above this. Good idea for you to keep keep track of that.
And the applicants indicated 15 nights a year.
And I would like to see those 15 nights be dedicated to Friday or Saturday nights. And,
Of
you know,
course, yeah.
I mean, look, we have Putnam National has their Friday concerts, and it's, they do that on the weekend. It's heard all around the area, but it's,
Except if it was the 4th of July that fell on a Tuesday. I mean, that would possibly be okay, things like
That's stuff
that.
that
Certain
language
holidays.
could be worked out
I'm not
on
trying to
holiday.
argue.
I wouldn't have a problem with
Things
that.
like that.
I would actually be fine restricting it to just Saturday nights. I mean,
Yeah.
again, this isn't the core of our business. It would just be something.
And you wouldn't be having rock bands come in and doing things, or you may?
If we had outdoor music, we'd like some flexibility on the.
So they would probably have to be held to a certain decibel also, but that would be something you'd have to go through the town board again and
Right.
get your permit
I
for, so.
think we should keep that option open.
Yep,
I mean, what's nice is it's a pretty isolated area.
it is, but it's in a valley that echoes up to Kelly Ridge Road, Kelly Road,
St. Michael's Terrace.
St. Michael's Terrace, that whole
Yeah, St.
area.
Michael's Terrace is over there.
Because
Kelly Road.
when they're hammering at the Lee Schultz place, they can hear it elsewhere, so.
Any other comments, questions?
You could also hear the dogs howling from the
Correct.
ground all the time, too,
Agreed.
so it's not a quiet neighborhood.
So, Mike, you going to try to get over there before the next meeting?
Absolutely, I'll try to get over there. Probably won't be tomorrow, but I will try to get over there next week. No french fries.
I have a question. You have a detail of the proposed string lighting. But I can't, see- are there protective covers on those lamps? Or they just,
Are there,
the proposed string lighting, the detail you have on
Right.
the plan there, is there a protective housing on that bulb?
the string lights,
Because that was my next question.
the string lights typically have a protective over each one. I mean, generally it's,
Some don't. That's the reason why I asked the question, They typically don't. So just, and code requires it to be. Right. Yeah, so,
Usually,
so as you advance that, I would suggest that, and your architect can help it,
Okay.
detail a light that's going to first meet our code and have protective cover.
I mean, I think these are more leaning toward decorative lighting as compared to bright.
my guess is they're probably the decorative party lights
That's right,
that
that's
everyone
right.
uses.
That are made of plastic.
think if you do the low voltage, you don't have to worry, but when you go to regular voltage, you do. I think that's the way it works.
I think we were planning LED, low voltage, sort of decorative lighting all around to sort of give the ambiance.
So, Mr. Chairman, this requires a public hearing.
Yeah.
Perhaps you can schedule that while Mike does the inspection to determine if there's
Given
a
that the
zoning
next
issue.
meeting is almost a month from now, I think that's probably the right thing to do as a courtesy to the applicant, is Mike will get out there, but rather than have Mike relay information at the next meeting a month from now and then schedule a public hearing, we can do them both in parallel. And it'd be nice to hear what the public has to say about this anyway.
Okay.
So we'll save you a little bit of time that way.
Appreciate it.
Just to
Okay.
go back to the lighting really quick. The last time you were here, we had talked about the lighting around the axe throwing area. Did you look into that at all as far as brighter lighting, now protective lighting, if those proposed string lights are going to be around there?
Well, generally for the axe throwing, what we like to do is have LED colored lighting actually shining, mounted on the back of the cage facing the targets. So that sort of lights that area up. So each cage would have a sort of a decorative colored LED lighting shining toward the target, so it kind of lights it up in a few different colors, so it looks cool. And that provides the required lighting for the area anyway.
I have a question on the axe throwing. Is there
Sure.
certain regulations you have to follow to build? I mean, axe throwing sounds dangerous in itself.
It does sound dangerous, but it's actually, it really is really quite safe. I mean, it's if you imagine, I mean, just to go off on a tangent for a second, we do go-karting, laser tag, bowling, all sorts of different types of venues. The number one injury product we have is bowling. I mean, so it's a little counterintuitive, but there's axe throwing venues that have opened up all over the country.
Right, no,
hundreds of
I
them.
know that.
And I don't think there's been one serious injury across any venue, because it's one of those things where there's such a perceived risk and it is an employee monitored activity. It's not like you're giving a group of 4 guys 2 axes and saying, hey, go have fun. When they go to the lane, there's a staff member there with them. So everybody throws the axe, and all the lanes are divided by wire mesh housing. So even beyond that, everybody throws the axe together, and then everybody goes, retrieves their axe together, comes back, and then when they're done, they put the axe down in a special way. They leave the caged area, the next group of people come in, they throw the axe, they all retrieve it together, and there's a staff member there policing the entire activity. So it's really quite a safe activity, even though it seems that it could be dangerous. I don't think there's ever been an injury across the country in one of
Do
these.
the staff members have to have certain training or any kind of safety precautions?
They get trained by our trainers, so our trainers have been trained by the people that install the lanes, and there's a group of people out there that install lanes and train teams, and then our trainers train the staff people.
Certain age and above, I would think, right?
Well, different venues do it differently. There's some venues that it's 12 and above. I mean, we typically, in our venues, we've kept it, and this is one of those things where you kind of anger you can't appease everybody. I mean, we've made it really like a 16 and above type activity, and we do that, and then we get parents that yell at us that why can't their kids do it? But it's and then of course when we do 16, we get some people that say, oh, you have to be 21. So I mean, no matter what we do, we're going to get angry customers.
Right.
But generally, we've left it 16 and above.
And they have to sign waivers or releases to be
Everybody
able to do it?
signs a waiver. Everybody gets trained by the staff. And this isn't one of those things. I mean, we're pretty tough on customers, so we make it clear that if you don't follow the rules, you're going to get kicked out. Right? There's no horsing around. There's a lot of fun. And I would say that this activity is probably the most fun activity we have across any of our venues for anything. I mean, I've done it with my wife at a place in the Bronx, in a place in Brooklyn called Kick Axe. Have you been there? And I mean, it's fun, right? And the way and I think when you go there, it feels completely safe, right? I mean, it's very controlled, and it really is. I'm going to tell you, it is the most fun that you could have with a group of other adults out of any of the product that we offer.
We might need to have a match against the zoning board.
And I mean, there's a thrill that goes through you when you stick that axe. That you're just, you know.
Thank you.
Anyway,
So why don't we do that? Why don't we, Mike will visit your site. In parallel to that, we'll have a public hearing at the next meeting,
okay.
and we'll save you a little bit of time.
Thanks.
Any other comments? Any board members?
I'm good, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Thanks.
House of Prayer and Worship, 365 Hill Street, site plan. Mike?
The applicant proposes to add bathroom facilities, parking, and handicap accessibility to the existing church on Long Pond Road in Mayapack. Variance is required for the following: lot area. Do you need me to go through all the numbers or just tell you what they are?
No.
Lot area, lot width, lot depth, front yard, parking spaces that are not permanently improved. Anytime you have more than 3 spaces that are required, you have to permanently improve them, and number of parking spaces. The total occupancy load for the church will be 51 and has to be posted as such.
Thank you. Rich?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, so this is the former Methodist Church becoming the House of Prayer, located on Hill Street. The applicant has noted the general comments where the referrals were needed and the permits that are needed. The area disturbance is 5,000 square feet. They have to get a permit for the state for stormwater. Some detailed comments. Just so you know, there's not served by either water or septic. Applicant proposes a new well and use of porta potties. Approval from the Putnam County DOH will probably be required for the well, and possibly the use of porta potties for this recommended use. Detailed comments: provide a legend on the drawing. Details for the proposed handicap access ramp must be provided. For the proposed stormwater units, depth of groundwater at those units must be provided to make sure they meet state criteria. Access for the maintenance of those units must be provided, and they must be rated for car or truck loading because they are located in the parking lot.
Thank you, Rich. Pat?
So I think most of you know this. This is a charming little church. It's been there forever. And I think this is really the reuse of that existing building. It is located within a wetland buffer. So Joel's proposing to repave the parking lot. But because it's in the buffer to maintain some of the spaces as gravel parking spaces, but he does have to provide ADA spaces, so he does have to pave to allow ADA access into the building.
Pat, when you said repaved parking lot, is the front of the building and there's 2 sides?
Correct. So
What's
it'll
the
be
parking
paved
lot?
down the front. The parking will be in the rear, and that's where the gravel parking spaces will be. But the front area where people will walk, that will be paved.
What about the side areas?
Paved. It's
Okay.
got to be to get that ADA access to the ramp that Joel's proposing to the building.
All right, sorry, thank you.
Yeah.
Pat, I'm sorry.
One side is paved, the other side is not, I believe, correct?
No, it's both paved.
Both sides? Okay, sorry about that.
Yeah,
I
because
thought
we
you
have
only had
one-way traffic.
accessibility on the one side coming up.
Yeah.
As Rich said, they're proposing porta potties behind the building. Again, there's no sewer water serving it. That's typically a temporary improvement, so the question just to the applicant is why can't there be bathrooms installed in the building? As Mike indicated, there's a bunch of variances associated with this. Question to, are there any physical modifications to the building being proposed? Again, it's a very charming building, so we'd want to know about that, particularly in your role as the Architectural Review Board. There is that ADA ramp that I mentioned coming around the front of the building, so you should have a good understanding of that, what it's going to look like. Sometimes those features can be very distracting. So as your, again, as your role as an architectural board, you just want to know what that looks like. Questions about lighting, is there any new lighting proposed? And things like, is there a dumpster refuse enclosure proposed? If it's not, what are they doing? If it is, we don't want it to show up in a required parking space down the road. So just some clarifications.
Thanks, Pat. So Joel, tell us about the project, and tell us, one thing that caught my eye right away is permanent porta potties. Just doesn't, to me, make any sense, but explain it to us.
We're very happy to. I think most of you probably have passed by this church 1,000 times. Originally, when we first got the job to work on this church, we did some research, and believe it or not, we found out that the deed for this church goes back to 1877.
Nice.
A little bit before both our times. Anyway, as Pat said, it's a charming church. Except for the handicap ramp, we're not changing anything. The front of the building will be exactly the same as it is. Also, if you pass by there, you'll see that there's some paved area in front of the church, which right now is where they just park head-on and have to back out into Hill Street, which is obviously dangerous. So that what we're going to do is that we've eliminated all the parking in the front, and we're going to put some planters in front so nobody can park there. And basically, we have one-way traffic coming around the building. They'll enter it on the north side, come out on the south side. And as Michael said, any access and the handicap spot has to be paved, what's called permanent pavement. The other spaces we're proposing to be gravel. Again, this represents where the wetland is. This line over here, the circle or this arc, represents the 100-foot setback. So we're trying to keep as much pervious space as possible, and all these parking spaces here will be gravel. And again, because of the requirement for permanent pavement, the handicap spot and the access to it and the access out of the property has to be paved. We have several agencies that we have to be involved with: the New York City DEP, the New York State DEC, Putnam County Health Department. As was mentioned, we have made an application for a well on the property, because right now, believe it or not, all these years since the 1800s, there's no water, there's no sewer on this building at all. And the Methodist Church, which was there until about a couple of years ago, basically used porta potties. The site, as you can see from this layout here, is rather constricted. There is the next door neighbor, their septic system is actually in the buffer area behind the church. And basically, there is no room to put any kind of a septic system, so we're proposing to keep the porta potties. And what we'll do is provide access. Right now, you have to go outside to get to the porta potty. What we're going to propose is to get access from the interior, so even though it's a porta potty, at least you don't have to go outside to get to it, which is a good thing, I think. There are no public improvements, so I don't believe a bond would be required.
Will there be a laboratory sink?
Yes, in the porta potty.
Each one will?
Oh, yeah, each one will have.
I'm just
it,
curious
of
if they
course.
could wash their hands.
And the purpose of having the well is so that we can get water into the porta potty. As far as there'll be no garbage enclosure, because basically this building will be used maybe once, the most twice a week, and they'll have the refuse, which will be probably in the most cases will be paper with a garbage can, and then whatever day of the week the refuse comes to pick up, it'll come out, and then the can will go back in. So there'll be no need to put a refuse enclosure in there, because there's just not that much refuse.
Question about the porta potty. Maybe it's my inexperience, but in the winter, is that going to be an issue, running water out to a porta potty and having it?
No, it's obviously heated. It is heated.
The porta potty's heated?
Well, yeah.
And how is it heated?
I believe it's electric heat.
Joe, where's the porta potties going?
Oh, here and here. And the other
And that's
question.
within, inside the church?
No. Right now, there's two little niches in the back of the church, and the porta potties, there'll be two
Okay.
of them, and they'll each fit in that niche, so basically to square off the back of the
Are
building.
these units that have like running water?
Yeah, I mean,
lights?
it's like a bathroom.
Yeah.
Except that on a regular basis, the porta potty comes in and
They have to
cleans it out.
fill the potable water, they have to pump out the...
Right, and the whole idea is, instead of having to provide a container of water each time, the purpose of having the well is to bring the water directly to the porta potty, so
So
there'll
you're
be
gonna have the well water feed.
continuous water.
So I think we'd ask Joel if you could provide details. So I've seen, you've all seen at the golf tournaments, luxurious portable bathrooms.
Weddings.
I've never seen them this
Yeah, no,
small.
that could be very nice.
So I think if you can provide us a detail that they do indeed make those kinds of facilities that are 4x4, that would be
Actually,
useful. I've just
all
never
right,
seen.
Actually, if you've been out to the site, the one that the Methodists use is actually in the back of the building, so.
And it's heated and has running water?
Well,
That's
no,
what
it
I'm
doesn't
getting.
have running water. Right now, there's no well. What happens now is when they clean out the porta potties,
They
take the
refill
waste
a
away,
tank?
they refill the tank for the, for the toilet and for the sink.
Yeah, so if you can we get a detail of that?
I think that's a great point. So just to repeat, so these porta potties are gonna have electric, they're gonna be indoors, and once the well's done, they're gonna have running water to them?
Yes.
I think the details are a good idea to that because
Well, what detail? Just tell me what you want.
the specifications,
Whatever
a
the
picture.
Oh, the specification, okay,
Yeah.
that's no
Yeah,
problem.
cut sheets on it.
Yeah, of course.
Send us a link, or if you, hard copies.
Yeah, okay, I mean, I'll find out what the company is and we'll get those details. of
So
course.
what happens if the water runs? If somebody leaves the water running, does the porta potty fill up and overflow and go into the wetlands? That's a detail that I think the
Does it
board
go to
would be
drain?
aware
Where
of.
does it go? It can't
And
go
then
to
the
No,
DOH is probably going to have a say in this on the grand
Well,
scheme of
we've
things.
already been having conversations with the Department of Health regarding this, and they understand too that because of the size of the site, and obviously there's no place to put a septic system, but we are going to, they will eventually, once they review it, give us the well permit.
But you may have to have some sort of an alarm system now.
Well,
Once it fills to
I
a certain
think,
degree, it shuts the water.
again, I think it's one of those situations, and I can check that out, where you press the thing down, the water comes out, and then it automatically stops. So
The water doesn't go directly into the tank, it goes to a holding tank and flush.
Correct, but if that keeps going and going from a well,
If they could put
does
a-
that
They
overflow
could put a
eventually?
float
Is all I'm
switch in the
saying.
tank that would cut off the water supply.
It's open.
Again, I'll get the specs as you've requested, but I'm sure these porta potties are all over the place, and I'm sure they have, like Michael said, there's got to be some kind of system whereby the water just doesn't keep running.
And another question, you said there's access from the building itself.
Correct.
So what does that mean? Are these porta
Those
potty
that-
units external to the building, or are they in part of the building?
No, these two X's here, these are the porta potties, and the door to the porta potty will, in many cases, usually outside, like at fairs and so on and so forth, the door will be at the point here where the church itself projects out. So from that point, you will be able to go directly from the church into the porta potty.
I'm still not getting something. If I'm inside the church, do I have to go out the
You can go into the porta
door?
potty without going outside.
So
The
there,
porta potty, think of a rectangle. At one end of the rectangle is a door. That door normally would go to the outside.
I get
In
that.
this case, the door will be up against the building, so that door will open into the church.
so is it weather sealed to the building? I mean,
Yes, of course.
Okay, okay. And they can service it without breaking that seal and doing all of
Oh,
that?
yeah.
Okay.
The other question that Pat brought up, the church itself, except for the handicap ramp, will look just the way this picture looks. We're not proposing any changes. The stained glass, if you walked around the building, is there, and it's beautiful. And I think it's a beautiful building, and I think it's good that it's going to be used now. Of course, it's been basically hasn't been used for at least a couple of, what's about 2 years, Mark? It hasn't been used?
Yes, I said it was a while, and
Yeah.
you said that they've been using it every year, but
So if you're looking at that structure, if you walked around back, would the porta potties protrude out from the back of the building? But
Hold on, maybe I can show it to you.
And again, Mr. Chairman, just to the point I raised earlier, to maintain the porta potties, to have a company that services them regularly, I'm not sure that it's less expensive than to build two 11-square-foot additions at the rear of the building to create permanent bathrooms. So more information is necessary, I
But
think.
it's the septic issue, which is
That's the problem.
Yeah.
You have the fact that.
I hear you, Joel, so that's
So
what,
the whole idea is to get a company that's going to provide the unit,
Yep.
and also provide, take the unit away.
Well, it'd be the same thing if you had bathrooms and it went into a holding tank and that had an alarm on it and you pump it however often, if it's whatever the gallon allowance is.
I think we need some more details. We need to hear from the health department, certainly.
Okay.
Joel, one thing I'm curious about, and if I'm reading this right, so you're proposing there'll be 7 parking spaces
Yes,
in total?
yes,
Okay. And the church has an occupancy of 51?
correct.
Okay. Is this an existing congregation that is going to be using this church? Because I'm wondering.
Right now, I think they operate out of, up in Carmel, number one. Number two, their parishioners are scattered all around the area, and basically, there probably will never be more than maybe 2 or 3 cars, because what they do is they have a van, and they actually go around and pick up the parishioners to come in, for a Sunday service. So even though the variance sounds like it's large, which it is, the number is large, but the way the church operates, most of the people will be picked up, they're elderly people, so they'll be picked up, brought to the church, and then brought back home.
I mean, you see the concern.
Of course, and I think that's...
And that's why they're here, because I was uncomfortable with them parking on, what is that there, Long Pond?
Long Pond, yes.
I was uncomfortable with them parking on the road right there.
Yeah.
So when it first came in front and we were discussing it, this is why we evolved into this, because they have to put the bathrooms in. You can't obviously have church where there's no bathroom at all. There's
Right.
not even an adjacent building with accessible, with.
Right.
So that turned into the bathrooms and turned into parking and everything else. So that's why we're here, and that's what the goal is, to get something safe and better for everybody.
Yeah.
Is there any on-street parking that would even be available?
Zero.
Absolutely not. Michael just addressed that. If you've been by there when the church was actually operating, unfortunately, what they used to do is come off Hill Street and just park perpendicular to the building. And then, of course, when they left, they had to back out into Hill Street. Even though the speed limit is 30 miles an hour, when they're coming around this curve here, they're going probably between 40 and 50 miles an hour. So this was very, very dangerous. And discussions with Mike and Pat, we came up with putting planters in front, so there'll be no way that they can actually park in the front anymore. They must pull in coming from the north side, come out from the south side. And there'll be no parking at all in front.
You don't want people backing out onto Long Pond Road.
Oh, this is terrible.
On the bend.
To piggyback on Ray's point, so there's existing information that you can collect from their other operation to know how many vehicles come on an average Sunday, so for example, so.
Well, I can get you that information.
That would be
Yeah.
great, to know how it operates.
And then the amount of use and how many people are going to be there is going to drive the size of whatever septic, if the porta potty is going to be cleaned, how often they're going to be cleaned, and those are important questions. I mean, if there's if they get filled up on a weekly basis, that's part of the details the board is looking for also.
So to add on to that, I understand your point about the van picking people up, but if we're an occupancy of 51, are you expecting 51 people to show up?
No. Based on the way they're operating now, there's usually, the most would be 20 to 25, about half. But again, we have to, as Mike said, we have to do a layout, show where the pews are, and compute exactly how many people you can fit in there legally, and so that's where the 51 came in.
Correct. It's based on X amount of inches of pew.
Right.
So each person gets an average of X amount of inches.
Some more than others.
Yeah, I think these details are really important, because you could just imagine a barbecue there one Sunday afternoon when there's more people.
A wedding.
A fundraiser or something.
Funeral.
Yeah.
Do these sorry.
Vicky, no, please.
The porta potties that we're talking about, since we have a handicap ramp, do these porta potties have to be handicap accessible?
Yes. Yeah, actually, again, for that same reason, with the handicap ramp, a handicapped person can get into the church without going through steps, and the entrance to the porta potty will be at the same elevation, so we'll be able to go right in without any...
And be wide enough for a wheelchair or
Yes.
something like that?
Yes.
And big enough for a wheelchair to get in there?
Yeah, well, actually, it's actually quite large. Again, as the board asks, I will get the specs, we'll get an actual plan to show you what it looks like. But again, as I said in the beginning, I think this is basically a historic church, and I think that the way we're proposing, except for the handicap ramp, the church will look exactly as it did back in the late 1800s. And it's going to be used.
We would all love to see that building used. It's on the main street there. just inundate us with details on this septic and portisan and everything,
problem.
because you can hear where everybody's concern is, so.
Absolutely.
I mean, I was under the impression that you were talking about like construction site kind of porta potty, so the details would be very
A
helpful.
little bit nicer than that.
It's got a heater, it's got a toilet.
I hope so
it's
for the
got a
church.
sink,
What's that?
I hope so for the church.
And this is an ADA. Just spec one for you, Joe.
Anthony just brought one up, but bring us the details on
No,
it.
I'll get from the company, I'll get all this back.
That'd be great.
Okay?
Okay.
Anything else?
The design
Yeah.
intent.
Thanks, Joe.
Okay, thank you. Have a great holiday. Have Merry Christmas.
You
Have a
too.
good
You too,
holiday.
Joe. Thank you.
Stay safe.
Good to see you. Thanks, Joe.
You're welcome.
Fairhaven at Baldwin Place Road site plan. Mike?
Kind of. The applicant proposes to subdivide 11.8 acre parcel off the over 180 acre parcel. That's a separate submission. To develop a 72 unit supportive housing and parking using the multifamily senior housing criteria in the zoning code. This site plan must not be approved until the subdivision is approved and filed. It's just a procedural thing to make sure that the lot exists before we actually approve it. Define supportive housing so the ZBA knows if it can allow this to fall under the senior housing code. Provide lot depth and lot width lines, provide floor plans, elevations. We do have elevations, but the floor plans didn't have a lot of detail. I don't know if I missed detailed floor plans. Recreation space and clubhouse is required by code for the senior housing, so show us where that's provided on this map. Will there be a fire suppression system? Is there public bus route? Is this within 2,500 feet of retail service? What's the size of the apartment? And variances are required from the ZBA for the following: senior housing ordinance, age restriction, all people will not be 55 or over. Municipal or community sewer and water are required. I don't think that's available there. Parking, 108 spaces are required, 84 provided, variance of 24 spaces. And I wrote a note, I don't necessarily agree with the parking calculation or giving a variance from it, because generally when we have these multifamily, and I'm not saying this type because I don't really understand what this is yet, but other multifamilies, parking is always an issue. And when we have parking issues and people come out to these sites and they can't park near what they're trying to go see, or can't find spots and they're driving around parking lots, we get a lot of complaints about that. So, you know, this is something that we need a real description of what this use is so we can know about this parking request.
Thank you, Mike. Rich?
So this application encompasses a proposal to add 72 units of supportive housing with 84 on-site parking spaces and related site improvements on an 11-acre site located behind 150 Route 6. As Mike mentioned, subdivision has to come first, so this is a 11-acre site after the subdivision is subdivided. I'm not going to go through all my detailed comments, but we'll forward that to the applicant. But general comments, there's going to be a lot of permits needed for this, or referrals. New York State DEC, DOT, DEP, Department of Highway and Facilities from the county, Putnam County DOH, Putnam County Department of Planning under GML 239M, Town of Carmel Highway Department, Town of Carmel Environmental Board, and the Mayapack Fire Department. The permits needed are for stormwater and wetlands, work permits and traffic studies with the DOT, DEP for stormwater and subsurface treatment, Putnam County Department of Highway Facilities, a work permit, along with review from our town highway, Putnam County DOH for wells and septics, ECB for wetlands. The wetlands delineation should be performed on the project. I don't know when it was done, but there was no date provided on it. Stormwater pollution prevention plan will be needed, meeting the state's recent guidelines, GP 020-001. Site location, proposed bridge over Route 6. The traffic study should be conducted and provided for review. The traffic study will be need to be reviewed and approved by the DOT and the Putnam County Department of Highway and Facilities. Applicant will be required to supply a stormwater maintenance agreement and maintenance per town code 156, 85, and 87B respectively. And should any public improvements be deemed necessary, performance bond and associated engineering fee will be established for the work. There's a couple of pages of detailed comments which will be forwarded to the applicant by Rose on Monday.
Thanks, Rich. Pat?
So all of our comments are really dealing with 5 and 6, the two items on the agenda. They're sort of the same project. So there's really two issues associated with this application. The first is the creation of the subdivision. And as Jeff will point out in a few minutes, the lot that's being proposed is a very peculiarly shaped lot. So ordinarily, we like to see lots that are sort of uniform and orderly. I'm sure there's a reason for that, but we need to understand the reason for creating a lot that's not sort of typical. The access to the lot is sharing the adjacent property. Stormwater facilities are on the adjacent property. And by the way, just for everybody's context, this is the site that was formerly Union Place, so everybody understands that. So we have a subdivision to create a lot that's sort of unusual. The second element is then to build this project that Mike described to you, and Jeff will talk about in a minute, which is for a use that's a prohibited use right now. So the use is an illegal use. They can't do this. So they've proposed to utilize the closest available use, which is the senior housing multifamily provision of the code. So the zoning board needs to determine if that's appropriate. That's issue number one. Issue number two, in applying that provision, as Mike went through, is that they don't comply with a lot of the provisions of that code. So do those provisions apply if it's not really that use, for example? So this is a curious sort of regulatory issue to wrestle with. Rich touched on the fact that there's a lot of site plan issues associated with this. There's really no need to get into any of that until we sort of understand if the zoning board is going to allow them to do this in whatever context they allow them to do this, by saying it's a senior housing facility and must apply to those regulations, or we'll just call it give it a use variance and allow it to operate under what it really is, and those provisions don't apply because it isn't a senior housing provision. A lot of the senior housing provisions relate to senior housing uses. This isn't a senior housing use, and the biggest issue with respect to the use is we really don't know what it is. So this is our introduction tonight, so I hope Jeff will spend a few minutes to really tell us what the uses are. And there are two proposed uses on the site from what I understand. One is a facility for folks that have disabilities, and the other half from the material that was submitted is an affordable housing project. It's not clear if that's linked to the other operation or not, or if it's a separate and independent operation, so that anybody that qualifies for an affordable housing project can live in there regardless of their need for services on the other side. So that's sort of we have to understand what's going on, but I think it's premature to dive into all the detailed site issues that Rich was talking about until we know how we're dealing with the zoning, and again, for use that's not allowed.
Thank you. Thank you. Jeff, why don't you give us an overview before we start asking questions, because you may answer some of them.
Good evening, Jeff Quintelmo from Insight Engineering, Surveying and Landscape Architecture. I will give you an overview, and also I want to clarify a few things that I think may be misunderstood. First of all, we're a 72-unit independent living or apartment complex. That's basically what we are. This complex will be owned and managed by a company, a local company by the name of Search for Change. Search for Change has their headquarters in White Plains and provides supportive services throughout Putnam and Westchester County. One of the supportive services that they do offer has to do with housing. They've submitted a description with our application of who they are, what they do, and how they're going to use the site. They also submitted a needs assessment, which shows that there is a need for this type of facility within Putnam County and within Carmel. The independent living, as Pat indicated, will be made up of a mix of their clients. Their clients are people who need supportive housing. They have disabilities, they have emotional trauma that they're moving through, they have financial concerns. So right now, the proposal that they've put forth for the 72 units of independent living are 36 of them as supportive housing for disabled and 36 for workforce housing, which is affordable housing where people are having economic problems meeting typical market rate rents. They do this, as I said, throughout the region. I'll point out that this same model we were involved with in East Fishkill, town next, 2 towns over. It wasn't this operator, and it wasn't the developer, completely different group of people, but same concept, where they brought workforce housing in with supportive housing. And the most important part of the program, as I understand it, is that they're together. Okay, what they don't want to do is take the disabled population and put them in their own facility somewhere else. It's all about integrating and working together as a community. So that's the big picture in terms of the use. As I said, Search for Change submitted a 2-page statement of use which detailed out who they are and what they do. They also submitted a needs assessment. As Pat pointed out, this is actually one of the parcels that made up the previous Union Place project. This is a 182-acre parcel. Our proposal is to break about 12 acres, I think 11.5 acres off for this use. What we're trying to do with the odd-shaped lot is to be able to maintain the concept of a future through road through this property to connect back out to Route 6. That was always one of the main drivers with this property, was to get an intersection across from Grand Meadow Drive and then also connect to Route 6 to where the new signal is. So, the idea here from a big picture planning standpoint is to preserve that ability for in the future to connect that roadway through.
Jeff, where would the banks be that were just put up not too long ago on Route 6? Because I was under the impression this is like behind the banks.
Right here.
Oh,
Right.
okay.
So right now, there's the start of a road that services the 2 banks with the signal, and that road was aligned so that this future connection of a road could happen back to Baldwin Place at an intersection with.
So how would it connect through, I'm looking at the darkly shaded area, so that, it'll just go right through that?
Correct, right. There would be a reservation or an easement, or, there would be we've talked about some different ways to achieve that. Now, as far as, there was also a question about a few things Mike pointed out relative to the senior housing. We took a look at your code, your consultants, and we agree that this particular use is not spoke of in your code and therefore is not permitted. Our goal is to get to the ZBA to see if we can get some relief from them to allow it to happen. We did submit schematic floor plans. This building actually has been developed to a fair degree by the architect to meet the exacting standards of Search for Change. Those schematic floor plans were submitted. We can give Mike the clarification he seeks. Just to be clear, your code does not require a clubhouse. Your code requires community space, which we have provided. We've provided recreation. Mike also points out that we need central sewer and water. It does not say municipal sewer and water. It says central community water and sewer. This would be a centralized community water and sewer project.
I'm sorry to interrupt, Jeff, but I just want to clarify that all of those provisions apply to a senior housing facility, which this isn't. So again,
Correct.
the zoning board has to figure out how to deal with this. Do those provisions apply or don't they apply to this particular use?
I have a question. Is this age restrictive?
No, it is not.
It is not. So
Right. If it were
why do
age
we- why do we use
restricted,
the
it
word
would
senior?
conform.
Pat, I think that's more for.
No, I've heard several times the senior associated with this project, yet it's not age restricted. It's 36 units of affordable housing and 36 units for support.
There's such an issue here, because if it was age restricted,
That's what I wanted to
perhaps they fit under the
restate
senior
that.
housing provision. They're not, so that really doesn't apply.
So does the master plan that's currently underway affect this in one way or the other, or help this, or, I mean, if we go through a whole master plan process, would that address anything like this, or would it not?
We have not discussed that this far. Okay?
They could provide another use for this property too, the master plan.
Yeah, well, obviously, that's a vehicle that can do this. It can create a use, it can modify the zoning. That's a possibility instead of the zoning board granting a variance, which I'm not even sure what the variance would be. But I don't know, that's, how many months down the road before that comes to fruition.
Yeah, I don't think you want to,
How can the zoning board, though, create a variance for something that change, I mean, you're going under the senior model, that code, and the variance would take it out of that senior. I mean,
That's what I'm troubled by, Ray, so I'm not sure what the answer is. I'm sure they can do that. The zoning board is empowered to modify the
Waive-
code, right?
That's correct. They're
So-
allowed to waive the code in any way they feel fit. If this is a use variance, then they need to show the criteria and meet the criteria for use variance.
Would that be spot zoning?
I was going to ask Jeff, have you considered going to the ZBA straight away and asking for an interpretation?
So I'm going to say yes, the team did, not me personally, but the team, the theory here on our side, from the applicant and the development team, is that, the town code right now does not have multifamily as a use that would accommodate this. The only multifamily that gets close to this is your senior housing law. Their decision was to utilize the metrics in that, because this facility, I'll be very frank with you, this facility is exactly like one that would be developed for over 55. And if they just change that one provision, they would be conforming. And they believe it gives them strength to utilize your code and the planning foundation in your code that says, hey, multifamily works in this way under these particular conditions, albeit for 55 and older. And what I'll tell you is some of their disabled population actually functions much like 55 and older. And they made the decision to utilize that as a planning tool to develop a proposal that the town could understand and latch onto and seek variance maybe just for the age limit.
But it's not just the age limit. For example, the existing code provision requires 2 stories, you're going to 3 stories, right?
Right. What I'd like to do is meet with Mike and go over the provisions. That is a provision that we would need relief from also, yes.
So Joe.
That's an area of variance.
Joe, when you mentioned go to the zoning directly, did you mean before coming here?
I did,
So,
Just to get their feel on,
for an interpretation.
so if it was a clear interpretation, that probably is the right route for them. But in this case, we have to understand what's being built on the property, so I'd rather the zoning board not say, yeah, you could do it, and then come to you and say you can't do it because it's inappropriate.
Yeah,
So I think this is the right process, so you can understand if they could theoretically build this building on the property. If you're comfortable, then the trip to the zoning board makes sense. So I don't think it's a full review.
No,
I
we
don't think-
wanted them here first.
Yeah, I don't think you have to address all those details. You just have to be reasonably satisfied that, yeah, this could probably work.
So, Jeff, you talk about a component of it that would be for handicap, and then another component. So with regard to the part that's for the handicap, is there going to be some sort of therapeutic component to this facility? Is there going to be services provided? I mean, or is it just residents for handicapped people?
So, yeah, handicap is the wrong word, but, supportive housing for disabled, right? So disabled, as I understand it, can come in many different forms. This, as I said in the beginning, this is an independent living facility. So these are apartments, and the idea is that people with severe disabilities cannot live independently. That's my understanding. Again, I'm not here to speak to you guys as an expert on the disabled. We had the same discussions in East Fishkill several years ago. This is a population of the disabled that are at a point where they need to assimilate back into the community. They need to live independently. Now, each of them may have a different case associated with the support they seek, okay? Some of the disabled may require a weekly visit for a certain purpose. Others may require a daily visit for a certain purpose. Some may require none.
Does
Jeff,
that
when-
occur on site, or do they go off to wherever they're going?
So again, I'm not an expert in this, and I'm telling you what I've been told and some of it happens here, some of it happens elsewhere, where they're picked up and brought. One of the main reasons why their parking is sought to be reduced is because they just flat out don't need it, because the disabled population, a very small percentage of them will have a car and utilize a car. And again, we can provide the background for that. That's part of what we're going to have to prove to the Zoning Board of Appeals for that variance.
How would this impact traffic on Route 6? With your long-term connection into Route 6?
Yeah,
And I
so-
guess
so the
coming
cur-
back-
the cur-
and then coming around Baldwin
Yeah.
Place to get there.
So the short answer is, we're not proposing to connect to Route 6, and there'll be a separate application, hopefully, sometime down the road, that would connect to Route 6. We're coming off of Baldwin Place Road.
So how much traffic change will there be on Baldwin Place Road?
Yeah, we can provide that kind of background. What we're trying to do at this point is figure out if we have a project or not, right? We've got a not-for-profit local provider of necessary services based on a market study that shows this is needed. They have spent substantial time and money to develop the concept and convince themselves that it can work and that it can be built. And at this point, we don't have a project until the ZBA grants us relief for the use. And questions like, exactly how is the water system going to be set up and work, and how is the sewer system going to be set up and work, and what the traffic, at the intersection with Baldwin Place Road, how that operates, that's all natural stuff that comes back and is dealt with at this board. But right now, our goal is to get to the zoning board and argue our case relative to the use.
I think we all have a lot of questions on this, but I'm not sure if it's not best for Jeff to meet with the consultants a little bit and work through this. Otherwise, I think we can be spinning our wheels a little bit here tonight with many more questions, from traffic to, what kind of impact would this have on the local fire department, the police department, others, there's a lot of questions to ask.
Well, this is supposed to be mainly a commercial development originally, with some apartments, from what I understand. You grant the variance to go away from the senior housing, and now you got another 160 acres that could fall into that precedent that you could have another hundreds of apartments like this, which would be a huge impact on schools and traffic and.
And just following that, I will say my initial, I agree, let's get more information, but my initial reaction for me personally is that this is getting a jump on the master plan that I feel uncomfortable about. And the reason for that is, just what Mark just articulated. It's the look, it's the feel, it's the traffic, it's the impact for that general area, and what does the town want to achieve. That's
And
my
how do you
only-
limit that to, once you gives these 76 units, that on 11 acres, now you just multiply that times the rest of the acreage, or divide it, whatever the
Yeah.
The only good thing is that a
Well,
use,
181 less 12 is 160, in my math.
Yeah, we're 72 units, not 76 units, and I know that's a small point. But, our application would be specific to, this one 11.5 acre parcel. A use variance does not create a precedent, nor does it open up the rest of the land for this to continue to proliferate across it.
I
As
think it
far-
does create a precedent, and I think that another developer can come along and say, hey, look, I'm doing the same thing. You did it for him, you do it for me. I beg to differ.
Well, it's the same owner of the property who could split this up to several
variance is
different
not it.
developers or projects like this, from what I unless I'm wrong, and keep doing this over and over until he gets away from the commercial that was supposed to be there and moves into more of a residential, which would
And part
have a
of,
huge impact.
and part of that, it's not just the development, it is the type of development. With commercial, that implies a certain tax revenue. I don't know what the tax revenue from this would be and how it impacts, school expenses and things like that. And that's, to me, a master plan issue.
And why would you limit, you have so much acreage there, but you're looking for a variance for parking? Why not, you have so much land there, just eliminate that part of the variance if this is even a possibility?
They don't need the parking. I mean,
Well,
it's
that's
as
also
simple
part
as
of the
that.
criteria for
Yeah.
the zoning board to consider.
I mean, this is, if you step back from this for a minute, this is a disabled population and supportive housing for others in the community that are in need of this type of housing. That's what Search for Change does. They fulfill that mission in our community, okay? I can tell you that if there were 10 guys lined up to do this, I would guess that probably 8 of them wouldn't make it to the finish line because there's not the need for 10 of them, okay? So the idea of this proliferating, I think, is based on maybe not quite understanding what the needs are. And again, I can't speak to those. That's not my, I'm only pointing out that, the needs assessment that's specific to this area in Carmel and Putnam County, based on Search for Change mission and what they see and what they need to fulfill their mission, this is what they need, okay? And I understand your planning concerns, they're real. But if we don't have a project, I think it's disingenuous to ask an applicant to go study traffic and a lot of other things that ultimately are worked out, whether, it means you gotta put a light in, or you gotta reduce your unit count, or whatever you have to do. We're prepared to do that if we have a project. But our goal right now is to get to the ZBA. That's the venue where we've got to prove to them that we don't need 150 parking spaces, we only need 84, and prove to them that there's truly a need for this and that the code doesn't recognize it, but we meet the standards for consideration of a use variance. That's where we've got to make that argument. And all we're trying to do with your board is follow the town's procedure, which says you have to come to the planning board before you can go to the ZBA, because in other jurisdictions, you can go directly to the ZBA through the building department. And we're trying to be respectful and get feedback. I think your consultants gave some good comments. I think the suggestion that was made earlier for us to meet with them and discuss, what the different parts may mean or what more info would be helpful to you guys. But, again, our goal is to get to the ZBA, have our night with them to see if we can meet the necessary criteria for use variance.
So I agree with what you were saying, and I mean, and that was Pat's point. I mean, we have questions collectively, and that's what we're trying to flush out here. And you're right, we shouldn't focus on the traffic lights and those things, because that's for another day and another discussion. But in your plans, you talk about a children's play area. So who would that be for? Would that be for the disabled part, for the affordable housing part? How does that work into the picture?
Yeah, again, my understanding is that the disabled community is made up of a bunch of different constituents. There's veterans, there's people who have PTSD, there's people who have physical disabilities. They can have a family, right? They can have a kid.
I get it.
Right? And the workforce housing, the same. The workforce housing is made up of those in our community that really can't pay market rate rent easily, especially now. And they have kids. So, the children's playground is to accommodate the kids that may be within the community of the 72 units.
So would these units all be, in other words, there wouldn't be a discrete distinction between what, so they're all integrated together?
No, this, for all intents and purposes, this is a 72-unit apartment project.
Okay.
72 units of very nicely laid out, no different than Hillcrest Commons. 72 units. And in Unit 13, there might be a disabled individual and his wife. In Unit 14, there may be someone who's a blue-collar guy starting out who lives with his girlfriend, right? I mean, it's you have to think about it. It's no different than any apartment complex, but it's done through Search for Change, where people come saying, hey, I need help, I need a place to live, I need, you know, I need some supportive services to go with that, and they help them.
So in theory, just in theory, I mean, we could have 72 units, each of which has one child in it.
In theory, I
Which would-
think you would,
which
I
would
think
be a-
you would break some records statistically, but in theory, yes.
Yeah, I mean, the consideration then that I think we all need to think about is, you know, the impact on the school district and.
Yeah, maybe the positive impact on the school district in that you're finally bringing kids in so you can keep the teachers working.
You know, that just raises taxes, so it's not a positive influence.
I think, you know, I'd
I
like
think we
throw
need to
something
find
out
out
to the
more
board.
about this Search for Change. I'd like to know a little bit more about it.
Sure. Exactly.
If, you know, you can provide us with, because I'm on their
I'd like a
website right now.
representative here from Search for Change before
And,
we
you know,
refer
it's-
this to the ZBA.
Yeah, it's governed right now by the New York State Office of Mental Health, so that brings in a lot of different aspects. So I'd kind of like to have some more background on that.
Yeah, I could ask the executive director to come and answer your questions. I mean,
Jeff, I think, don't, Kim's point, I think on projects this size in the past, that's what we've usually seen, right? You look at a lot of applicants have come in, and they presented a little bit about their company and things that you really shouldn't be doing.
I have one more for you,
Not
Judge.
that you're doing a bad job, Jeff.
No, you're doing a great job.
You're doing a good job. It's
no,
just-
actually, you know, I actually wanted them to come. They couldn't make it this evening, and I apologize for that, but I understand that, you know,
Like I said, you're-
you deserve to talk to them.
No.
I understand.
Jeff, you mentioned before that they did a needs analysis for Putnam County, and they find that there's a need here. Was that part of the application?
Yes.
Okay, I want to take a look at that.
And just
Thank
further, I'm sorry, just further to that point, so they did a needs analysis in Putnam County. So will these residents be from this area, or will they be coming in from all parts of New York?
Yeah, again, my understanding is they service the regional population, okay? And again, I don't know that there's restrictions that, you know, if you're from Dutchess County, you know, can you utilize the services of Search for Change? I don't know that, but I'll get you that answer.
Yeah, my experience is dealing with Search for Change that it's not restrictive countywide, so it wouldn't be a situation where only county people would have access to it, that other jurisdictions would have access.
And that doesn't necessarily benefit the town.
Jeff, I think a separate and apart from the logistical issues with respect to the site itself, I think the board really needs to get more information on what Search for Change is, the population that it services, and how it services, because they're a very diverse group, and it probably would have been really good to have somebody hear from them. You have to tap dance around that tonight. But I think going forward, if the board can be provided with someone that they can ask these questions of, it's really not fair for you.
Yeah, and I agree, and I agreed that we will come back. So at this point, what we would like to do that I think would be productive is we'll meet with the consultants just to clarify some of the aspects that are maybe less than clear. And also come back with probably Ashley Brody, who's the executive director from Search for Change, so that he can answer some of your more specific
I think that'd be
questions.
terrific. I mean, I think we need to know more. This is a key project for us. So, yeah, that'd be great, Jeff, if you don't mind.
All ready?
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, great.
Thank you,
Thank
Jeff.
you, and everybody have a happy holiday.
You too, Jeff.
Okay.
Thank you. So we've covered 5 and 6 on this discussion. Jeff, thank you for your time.
But, wait, so, Mr. Chairman, the second one had the bike path going over the Route 6, so you may just want to just peek at that. So Jeff just put that drawing away. Sorry about that, Jeff.
All right, so look,
So
let's
it's
hit
just,
that
it's
quickly.
another aspect of the project that wasn't discussed, but I think it just should be brought to the board's attention.
Then let's do it. Number 6 is Fairhaven at Baldwin Place Road, sketch plan. Mike, you did have some comments on this.
I did. Again, lot depth and width lines, variance is required because it appears to me that the lot depth line exits and re-enters the lot. And then my question would be, why this C-shaped lot? Why not make it semi-rectangular? But we'll discuss that when we have our meeting.
Rich?
So my comments were virtually the same. There's no detailed comments to it, but it's all the needs of permits and referrals. So I just wanted this back on so the board could see what the subdivision was, what it entailed. There was a letter in the packet from the county wanting to see that bike path or the bridge or something to that effect, so that it was going to be beneficial. So Jeff can touch on that, but we'll let Pat go next.
Yeah, the county letter indicated that there was funding for this, so the question to Jeff really is, how is this linked to this project?
Yeah, and I meant to hit that before, I'm
Rich,
sorry.
thank you.
I got a little sidetracked in search for change. So, yeah, this isn't really part of our project. The county has been talking about the extension, the bikeway right now goes behind the plaza across the street. The county has been talking with the state for, I think, over a decade about a link through our property. I don't know who recalls when we came in for the bank, we talked about that?
Yes.
Remember?
Yes, sir.
Remember we said one of the key things we wanted to do in creating the lot for the PCSB parcel was to maintain the ability for that bike path to connect, because the county had these plans to make that connection. Well, the good news is that the county has actually advanced that. My understanding is that the county has $2 million that's been set aside for a while at their disposal, and they are, I believe, in the process of pulling the trigger on doing an extension of the bikeway where they would bring it from the existing trail across Route 6 through our subject property and back up to the Kohler Center with maybe a future link to the north sometime down the road. This is not our project. The only reason we submitted it was because the county reached out to us about, discussing the property again and the potential for a connection. And so we worked collaboratively with them on this concept, but this is their project. We're not putting a bridge across Route 6, okay? This is a county project with money that's already been allocated from the state, as I understand it. But the important part of it is that, we're working with them to offer whatever land needs to be offered and to make a connection ultimately into our project. And again, this is not our project.
Is approval of this contingent upon approval of your project that you discussed earlier?
Only if you like this. If you like this, it is. No, it isn't. No, this has really nothing to do with us, except they'll need some of the land from the landowner, and they would like to see the connection ultimately happen.
Sure. I remember talking about that a couple of years ago, Jeff.
Right.
When we
That's
did
correct.
banks.
The old railroad bed or something?
That's correct.
I think so.
Yeah, the old railroad bed, and you'll recall, that was the whole justification for this back property line for the bank that we tried to be looking ahead about. But the old railroad bed actually goes right through the middle of that wetland. There's high spots that you can even pick up in the wetland delineation of the old railroad bed. And the idea was to pick up the railroad bed and continue this
Correct. I thought that
eventually,
was
yeah.
when we talked about that back then, that
Yep.
what was the plan?
Yeah, and the pond or something was back
Yep.
there.
Yes, that's
Yeah,
correct.
It would be a nice,
Yep.
it would have been a nice, makes for a nice scene.
Jeff, thanks for doing it. It wasn't clear that was not, now it's clear that it is not part of the project, but it was submitted with the application material. So I think if you could just make sure that some documentation gets in there, that helps explain that what's going on with it, because, you're reviewing, I reviewed this, so part of my comments were, hey, you got to get in touch with the DOT, you're putting a bridge over Route 6.
Yeah, we did.
I don't know that that's not part of your project because it was submitted, so I apologize for that, I didn't realize it,
My
so.
bad. No problem.
No, it's good that you brought it up, that you caught
Yeah.
it tonight. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks again.
Thanks again, Jeff.
Happy
Thanks.
holidays
You
again.
too.
Thank you.
Carmel Center Senior Housing, Lot 3 for a bond return. Mike, comments?
Yeah, I don't generally go out on these, but I do have one comment. There's a piece of steel sticking up out of the ground adjacent to the fence behind the big building, number 37, on Dickinson, and it really should be removed immediately, please. It's about 5 inches, no, I wish, there's a picture on my thing.
I have
I mean, he could take my picture if he wants.
Yeah, it looks like it's a,
Angle iron.
an angle iron, right, thank you.
It's like, it's a T-shaped
sign
iron,
was cut
the old
down.
fence.
Sticks up about 4 inches, just enough to catch somebody's ankle. Ankle.
Thanks, Mike. Rich, you had comments also.
T-bar.
Mr. Chairman, in response to requests from the applicant for bond return for the reference site, the Town of Carmel Engineering Department has performed numerous site visits. We've been there in April, May, July, December of 2018, August, September, and October of 2019, May and October of this year. So this isn't something that's been sitting around. It's been hard to get them to finally meet the requirements of the performance bond. We have performed a site visit in October of this year to evaluate the status and warranting, see if the bond could be returned. The original bond at this lot was $2,579,959. The bond has not been reduced. Per what we've seen after all those site visits, the site improvements required pursuant to the board's site plan approval have been completed, and we recommend the bond be released. I also want the board to know we've already received requests not to have the bond released. I should have been forwarded to you. Those are from the residents at Pulte. So, but we've reviewed this, and like I mentioned, we've been there on multiple occasions trying to get them to finally meet the requirements of the performance bond, and they have.
Comments from anybody?
Does anyone have any further information as to what the HOA's complaints are? Because I know their complaints are specific for Lot 3.
I do not know.
Rich, do you have the memo handy?
Mr. Chairman, I do not. They just said they absolutely do not want the bond being returned. They have issues with Pulte and the site, is what they essentially wrote. I don't know if anybody else has that with them.
I
but
have it, yeah, and it's very nonspecific. It just basically says there are many issues with Lot 3, but it doesn't say what they are.
Which have not been resolved.
Correct, and they've hired an independent engineering firm, and they provided us a report on that, but nothing with that had to do with the performance bond. So there's the two different things going on. We have our, what we have to do here is to review the performance bond, look at it, but what they were talking about was, gutter might have fallen off, or.
The private improvements for,
Right,
and that's
so-
been longstanding. We've been involved in this for years.
But isn't our next step to schedule a public hearing?
It is.
So why don't we?
That's the best thing to
my
do, so you can hear from the neighbors.
recommendation is
Right.
Schedule a public hearing, and then let's hear from the neighbors, and maybe they have some valid points.
I'll make a motion to schedule a public hearing.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks. And Rich, thanks for your due diligence on this. You've been out there a number of times. Thank you.
You can thank the entire engineering department. Rob Barrow went out there a bunch of times. I've been out there a bunch of times. I've had interns go out there a bunch of times. So it's been a collective effort to be out there. Paul got tired with me.
Paul, we'll see you at the next meeting.
Yeah, happy holidays, everyone.
Thank you.
Happy holidays.
You too, Paul. And do we have a motion to accept the minutes of November 12th, 2020?
I'll move the minutes and send one minor correction to Rose, and, otherwise they were fine.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
All
I'll
in favor?
second.
Aye.
Aye.
Meeting adjourned.